January 18th, 1980, a date that most people have forgotten. But if you understand what happened on that day, you will understand exactly what is about to happen in the next few weeks. On January 18th, 1980, silver hit $49.45 per ounce. Just 12 months earlier, it was trading at $6. That is not a typo. Silver rose nearly 10 times in a single year. And here's what the financial media never tells you. It was not because of speculation. It was not because of greed. It was because the physical market broke. The same way it is breaking right now. I'm a private commodities analyst. I have been tracking physical silver markets for over a decade. And if you want to know who is actually behind this AI avatar, there's a channel intro on the homepage. But right now we do not have time for backstories. Right now I need to tell you something that I have never said before. The exact conditions that preceded the 1980 silver explosion are forming again, not similar conditions, the exact same pattern, physical shortage, paper promises exceeding physical supply, banks caught on the wrong side, rule changes to protect the system, and a trigger event that nobody saw coming. In 1980, that trigger was the Hunt brothers and a broken delivery mechanism. In 2026, that trigger is a tariff policy that has created a geographic trap in the silver market. What you're about to learn in the next few minutes will change how you see this metal forever, silver rising 10 times in 12 months. The exact same conditions forming again right now. I have documented every parallel, every data point, every connection in my financial research library, link in the description. But let me take you back to 1979 and show you exactly what happened. Most people think the Hunt brothers story is about two Texas billionaires who tried to corner the silver market. That is the simplified version. The story your financial advisor tells you to explain why silver is too risky. Here's what actually happened. Nelson Bunker Hunt and his brother William Herbert were sons of H.L. Hunt, one of the richest oil men in American history. By the mid-1970s, they had inherited billions, but they had a problem. They did not trust the dollar. Inflation was running at double digits. The government had just abandoned the gold standard in 1971, and they watched as paper money lost purchasing power month after month. So they made a decision. Instead of holding dollars, they would hold silver, real physical silver, not paper contracts, not ETF shares, actual metal that they could take delivery of and store in vaults. Between 1973 and 1979, the Hunt brothers systematically accumulated an estimated 195 million ounces of physical silver, 1/3 of the entire world supply at the time. But here's the critical detail that nobody talks about. They were not the only buyers. The inflation of the 1970s created a wave of demand for hard assets. Ordinary investors, seeing their savings evaporate, started buying silver coins. Small dealers could not keep inventory on the shelves. Refineries were backlogged for weeks. Physical premiums over spot prices climbed to extraordinary levels as demand outstripped supply. Jeffrey Christian, one of the most respected analysts in the precious metals industry, later estimated that the Hunt brothers themselves only contributed about 50 cents to $1 of the silver price increase. The rest was pure physical demand from millions of people who had lost faith in paper money. Silver went from $6 in early 1979 to over $30 by December. And then in January 1980, it exploded to nearly $50. In inflation-adjusted dollars, that $50 is equivalent to approximately $190 today. Stop. What I just showed you. The parallel between 1980 and today, 3 identical factors converging at the same time. This is only part of the story. In my financial research library, I have documented 5 additional warning signs that the banks are trying to hide. With all the data, all the sources, all the connections I cannot show in a single video, the complete 1980 analysis, plus the tariff trap, plus Venezuela, plus the dollar endgame, and every new documentation I publish, one access, all analyses, forever, link in the description. But now, let me show you what made 1980 so violent and why 2026 could be even worse. Here's what actually broke the market in 1980. The Hunt brothers were taking physical delivery of their silver contracts. This is important. Most traders in the futures market never actually want the metal. They buy a contract, the price goes up, they sell the contract, they pocket the difference. The physical silver never moves. It is a paper game backed by a small amount of actual metal. But the Hunts did something different. They said, give us the silver, actually deliver it. And when they started taking delivery, the banks realized they had a problem. They had sold far more paper silver than they had physical metal to back it up. This is called the fractional reserve system in precious metals. It works fine as long as nobody asks for the actual product. But when someone does ask, when someone actually demands delivery, the whole system starts to crack. By late 1979, the bullion banks were facing what traders call fails to deliver. They had contracts coming due and not enough silver to fulfill them. So what did they do? They changed the rules. On January 7th, 1980, the COMEX introduced something called Silver Rule 7. This rule placed heavy restrictions on buying silver on margin. Essentially, it banned new leveraged purchases. The stated reason was to reduce speculation. The real reason was to stop the bleeding. If you are still here, you understand what is really happening. The question is simple. Do you want all the documentation, or just this summary? The complete financial research library, the 1980 pattern, the bank exposure, Venezuela, the dollar system, and everything that comes next. Link below. Now let me continue with what happened after the rule change. Silver Rule 7 worked for the banks. With leverage restricted, new buying dried up. The price peaked on January 18th and then started to fall. By March 27th, 1980, a day known as Silver Thursday, silver had crashed from $50 to $10. The Hunt brothers faced a $100 million margin call they could not meet. The entire financial system nearly collapsed. A consortium of banks had to arrange a $1.1 billion bailout just to prevent a systemic meltdown. The Hunts were later convicted of market manipulation. They were fined. They were banned from trading. They became the villains of the story. But here's what nobody tells you. The real villains were the banks who had sold paper silver they could not deliver. The Hunts did not create the shortage. They exposed it. They pulled back the curtain on a fractional reserve system that was running on faith, not metal. And when that faith was tested, the system broke. The Hunts were the scapegoats. The banks were the problem. And 45 years later, the same banks are running the same game. Only this time, they are even more exposed. Let me show you the numbers. In 1980, the Hunt brothers controlled approximately 195 million ounces of silver. That was about 1/3 of the global private supply. Today, just two banks hold short positions in silver exceeding 325 million ounces. Two banks, 325 million ounces. Short. That means they have sold silver they do not have, betting that the price will go down. The Hunt brothers were prosecuted for holding 195 million ounces long. The banks are holding 325 million ounces short, and nobody says a word. This is the asymmetry that drives me crazy. When individuals try to corner a market, they go to prison. When banks do it, they get bailouts. Now let me show you the trigger that changes everything. On Friday night, the administration dropped what I am calling the nuclear tariff bomb. 10% tariffs on imports from 8 European Union nations plus the United Kingdom, effective February 1st. That is 14 days from now. And if no deal is reached on Greenland by June 1st, those tariffs escalate to 25%. The mainstream media is framing this as a negotiating tactic about Arctic territory. They are talking about geopolitics. They are talking about diplomacy. They are completely missing the point. This tariff has created what I call a geographic arbitrage trap in the silver market. Let me explain this in simple terms. The two largest silver trading hubs in the world are London and New York. The LBMA in London, the COMEX in New York. Under normal conditions, silver flows freely between these two markets. When London gets tight, metal ships from New York. When New York gets tight, metal ships from London. This constant flow is what keeps prices synchronized globally. Arbitrage traders make their living moving metal from low price zones to high price zones. But with a 10% tariff, and potentially 25%, that flow becomes economically impossible. Here's the math. At $90 per ounce, a 10% tariff adds $9 to every ounce imported into the United States. At 25%, that is $20 versus $50 per ounce. If you're a bank and you ship silver from New York to London to cover a short position, that metal becomes 25% more expensive to ever bring back. The result is a one-way valve. Silver can leave the US, but it cannot economically return. And here is the irony that makes this situation so extraordinary. In the first quarter of 2025, the bullion banks moved tens of millions of ounces from London to New York. They were front-running the Section 232 review. They thought they were being smart. They thought tariffs would restrict imports into the US, so they moved their metal inside the walls before the gates closed. But they made a critical miscalculation. The tariffs do not just restrict imports, they trap exports. Any silver that leaves US vaults now faces a 25% penalty to return. The banks moved their metal into a prison, and they locked the door themselves. This is not like 1980. This is worse. In 1980, the problem was demand. The Hunts were buying and taking delivery. The banks could respond by changing margin rules and restricting leverage. In 2026, the problem is geography. You cannot change a rule to eliminate a tariff. You cannot adjust margin requirements to make shipping costs disappear. The physical reality of moving metal across an ocean does not care about exchange policies. If the LBMA needs silver and the only available supply is trapped in US vaults behind a 25% tariff wall, no amount of paper shuffling solves the problem. The arbitrage mechanism that has kept global silver prices synchronized for decades is broken. Let me paint you a picture of what the next 3 months could look like. By early February, We are going to see a persistent premium for physical silver in London relative to New York. It will start small, maybe 2 or 3%. The mainstream media will call it a temporary dislocation. Regional supply constraints, nothing to worry about. By March, that premium will widen to 5 or 6%. Dealers in London will be charging $100 per ounce, while New York is still trading at $95. And the arbitrage traders will look at that spread and think, why do I not just ship metal from New York to London and capture that $5? Then they will remember the tariff. They will remember that shipping an ounce to London means paying $22 to bring it back. And they will realize the arbitrage does not work anymore. By May, if there is still no Greenland deal, we are looking at a 10 to 15% spread. London silver at $120, New York silver at $105, 2 different prices for the same metal. A complete decoupling of paper and physical. This is when the LBMA has to make a choice. Option 1, let physical silver in London spike to whatever price is necessary to incentivize sellers. Option 2, implement cash settlement and admit they cannot deliver actual metal. Option 3, declare force majeure and blow up the entire system. Pick your poison. Every single one of those options is catastrophic for anyone short silver, and every single one is bullish for anyone holding physical metal. Now, let me address the skeptics. I've been in this market long enough to predict the counter-arguments. Skeptic argument number 1, this is just a negotiating tactic and the tariffs will be exempted before February 1st. My response, look at the Section 232 review language. It specifically uses the phrase, all goods. If the administration wanted to exempt strategic minerals, they would have done it in the initial announcement. This administration does not bluff on tariffs. We have seen this playbook before. Skeptic argument number 2, the exchanges will just change the rules like they did in 1980. My response, changing rules does not create physical metal. Silver Rule 7 in 1980 restricted new buying. It reduced demand. But the problem in 2026 is not demand. The problem is logistics. You cannot write a rule that makes a 25% tariff disappear. The LBMA cannot borrow from COMEX if the cost of moving metal is prohibitive. Skeptic argument number 3, the price will just crash like it did in 1980. My response, in 1980, the crash happened because demand was cut off. Leverage was restricted. New buyers could not enter the market. But in 2026, demand is not the issue. Industrial demand for silver is not optional. Solar panels need silver. Semiconductors need silver. Electric vehicles need silver. Medical devices need silver. These buyers do not care if silver is $90 or $120. They need the metal to keep their production lines running. Industrial demand is a floor that did not exist in 1980. This is why the downside is limited, but the upside is potentially unlimited. Let me give you my personal framework for the next 14 days. Trigger 1, the $92 level. If silver gaps above $92 when futures open tonight, that is confirmation that institutional money is pricing in the tariff trap. Trigger 2, registered inventory movements. I'm watching the COMEX warehouse reports daily. If large amounts of silver move from registered to eligible, it means big players are hiding their metal, taking it off the table, making it unavailable for the scramble that is coming. Trigger 3, the EFP spread. EFP stands for exchange for physical. It is the mechanism that allows traders to swap a futures contract for actual metal. Normally, this spread is a few cents. If it blows out to $1, $2, $5 per ounce, the paper market has completely decoupled from physical reality. Trigger 4, margin hikes. If the COMEX raises margins by more than 20% in a single day, they are trying to shake out speculators. This is the same playbook from 1980. It means the physical situation is worse than they are admitting. Trigger 5, the London-New York spread. If this spread hits 5% or more, prepare for a force majeure event. That is the legal term for we cannot deliver because circumstances are beyond our control. It is the escape hatch exchanges use when the system breaks. Let me bring this home. In 1980, silver rose nearly 10 times in 12 months, from $6 to almost $50. In inflation-adjusted terms, that $50 is equivalent to $190 today. We are currently trading around $90. That means if history repeats, if the same pattern plays out, we could be looking at a move to $190 or beyond. And the conditions today are arguably more explosive than 1980. The banks are more short. The supply deficit is longer. The industrial demand is higher. And now we have a geographic trap that physically prevents the normal flow of metal. I am not telling you to buy silver. I'm not your financial advisor. I'm telling you what I see. I'm telling you that the last time these conditions aligned, silver rose 10 times. And those conditions are aligning again. The signal has been sent. The tariff bomb dropped on Friday night. The countdown has started. 14 days until the 10% kicks in. Less than 5 months until it potentially becomes 25%. The banks moved millions of ounces into U.S. vaults, thinking they were front-running restrictions. Instead, they trapped themselves. The LBMA is short. The COMEX is the only source, and the door between them is closing. You have been given the information. You have seen the pattern. You understand the mechanism. What you do with this knowledge is entirely up to you. But 45 years from now, when someone asks, where were you when silver broke free from the paper market, you will remember this moment. You will remember that the warning was given. You will remember that the pattern was clear. The only question is whether you listened. The math is unforgiving. The pattern does not lie. And history has a way of repeating itself when we least expect it. Stay sharp. Watch the data. Trust the math. If you found value in this analysis, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because when the next piece of this puzzle falls into place, you will want to know immediately. We will see each other tomorrow with the latest developments. Until then, stay informed and stay prepared.